Hey friends, we're continuing our Kingshot Hero series with the second generation Mythic or Orange heroes, and they are Hilda, Zoe, and Marlin. These will arrive in your kingdom sometime after Server Day 40. The exact day depends on how your server calendar lines up with the days of the week. Whether you're a spender or free to play, the Generation 2 heroes are a big deal and will completely shake up the meta on your kingdom for both Conquest and Arena mode, as well as Expedition mode. Accordingly, I'm going to walk you through a review of each hero's stats and skills, then share my thoughts on overall investment opportunities and prioritization strategy. But before we dive into the heroes one by one, let's take a quick look at how their stats compare, since this already provides us with some valuable insights into how they will shake up the game. On the Conquest side of the equation, all of these heroes have a basic attack value greater than 2,000. To put this into context, the Purple Archer heroes have a base attack value of 2,157, which means even Zoe as an infantry is at parity with them before we get into any abilities. Other notable references are Jabel at 2,220 attack, Amadeus at 2,128 attack, and Saul at 2,697 base attack. So we can see how this new crop of heroes has the potential for more powerful abilities than even some of the big damage dealers of the last generation. And there's another surprise if we look at the defensive stats. Zoe is the first character in the game thus far to not have that same 2,220 base defense that every other character has had up till this point. And her 39,960 health is only slightly outclassed by a maxed out Amadeus at 41,624. So for just about every player, whether free to play or high spender, Zoe will set a new standard for the capacity to soak up damage on the front line and help you win Conquest and Arena battles. On the Expedition side, all three of these new heroes at max star investment will increase troop attack and defense by 240.19%. This is higher than any other hero in the game thus far, except again for Amadeus at 260.20%. For reference, the rest of the Generation 1 Orange heroes provide 200.16% troop attack and defense. So overall, it's safe to say that each of these three heroes are better in every single stat compared to their three Generation 1 counterparts, including the pay-only hero Helga. Again, the only exception is Amadeus, who has slightly higher stats than Zoe except for defense. But the real question is, what are these heroes actually going to do with all of these stats? And to answer that, we need to go into their individual abilities one by one. Let's dive in. First up, we'll start with our new cavalry hero, Hilda. In Conquest mode, Hilda plays the role of a support character despite having the second highest attack in the game. That high attack value gives us a good starting point for her healing abilities, and if we take her signature ability, Rejuvenating Plea, we can see that it is an instant heal to all heroes equal to 280% of her attack value. That means at 5-star level 80, before accounting for any attack bonuses from hero gear, she'll heal almost 7,000 health to all 5 heroes at once. That's about 20 to 35% of the max health of each of the Gen 2 heroes. Healing an extra 35,000 health total on your side of the battlefield will significantly increase the uptime of your heroes. And she's also able to cast this skill 6 seconds into the start of battle, which is great timing. Far enough that there is some damage to heal, but not so long a wait that one of your heroes has fallen. After the first cast, she needs to wait 9 seconds for the cooldown to use the move again. Either way, this represents the first serious healing move to Conquest battles. Gordon had a little bit of healing in his kit, but if you watch my controversial Purple Hero Guide linked below in the description, you'll see why I didn't think it was going to meaningfully change the battle. In Hilda's case, it definitely might, especially since that 6-second mark is right before most enemy heroes would launch their ultimate abilities, so this could help you survive that volley. And then her Redeemer ability adds another heal. This one specifically targets the hero with the lowest health remaining. It's a bit less powerful due to the lower attack multiplier, but it has value in that it goes to the hero who needs it most to give them just a little more uptime. Even at this attack multiple, it could still top up one of your frontline infantry with an extra 10 to 20% of their max health depending on who you are using. And lastly, we have Intimidation, which is a disruption ability that stuns a target in addition to dealing them almost 200% attack damage. Now remember, Hilda has the second highest attack value in the game during Generation 2, so it still does some damage despite the low multiple. However, someone like Quinn dealing 560% damage to an enemy even with a lower base attack will still hurt more. But the most important thing about Hilda's skill is the 1-second disablement on top of that damage. This is essentially damage prevention from enemy heroes. Alone, it is not much, but when it's paired with other heroes' abilities that can otherwise stun or interrupt an enemy hero, it can make a difference in the battle outcome. And for the expedition moves, we start with Noble Path. Instead of increasing attack or defense by 25% like prior generation heroes, this move splits the difference. It's somewhat helpful, but I just don't see this move fitting in for that first position rally joining spot anytime soon, given the great options of other heroes in the game. Still, if you're leading rallies, there are worse skills she could have. An Elixir of Strength is one of those percentage-based moves that increases potential for damage to be dealt. In this case, a 25% chance to increase damage by 200%. This move is a straight-up improvement over Jabel's 50% chance to increase damage dealt by 50% mathematically. Now don't get thrown off on this phrasing of when attacking appearing on Jabel's move, since this actually means when your troops attack on their turn in battle simulation, not when you're on offense versus defense. And I've tested this between my accounts with Jabel's attacking each other to be sure. And also, don't get too hung up on this 25% chance of triggering. This is 25% chance per round of combat, but combat can last dozens of rounds in a simulated battle, so the probabilities will start to average out a bit. Similarly, her third skill, Trial by Fire, can provide a 40% chance of reducing damage taken by 50%. This is identical to Jabel's Rally Flag ability. And lastly, let's pull up her exclusive equipment. Hilda, like all Gen 2 heroes, gets up to a 60% health and lethality bonus when her equipment is maxed out. This is higher than the Gen 1 heroes at 50% and Helga's 55.5%, but still slightly less than Amadeus's 62.5% bonus. And starting with the Conquest ability, Holy Invocation, we get a massive 70% increase to her healing abilities. So take all of those high numbers I just mentioned earlier and multiply them by 1.7. This is a tremendous compliment to her healing role, and really helps carve out a unique spot for her in Arena. Fortitude is also a great skill in that it can give her a 15% buff to the health of all troops for rallies she leads on defense. This can be a great complement to a PvP defensive rally that stacked 4 of Gordon's 25% health bonuses, especially when you consider that these moves are all classified as special bonuses that are calculated both additively and multiplicatively. To understand what I mean by that, check out my ultimate guide to Kingshot combat video, linked below in the description. So my overall impressions of Hilda is that you should expect her to make a huge difference in Conquest and Arena as she becomes available in your kingdom. For Expedition, it's a little more complex, and here again I have to compare her to Jabel to make the point. She's clearly meant to be an upgrade to Jabel, but it's not so simple. Even though Hilda has a better skill in the first position, neither Hilda's nor Jabel's first position skill is that great as a rally joiner, so this doesn't actually matter so much. But if we think about rally leading, and we match expedition skills like for like between the two heroes, Trial by Fire is equal to Jabel's skill, Elixir of Strength is better, but I would argue that Jabel's 25% lethality increase is actually better than Hilda's mix of attack and defense, since it's just simply a more valuable stat. And on the widget skills, Jabel gets a 15% lethality bonus on defense versus Hilda's 15% increase to defender health. These are both two of the best stats to buff, but one is not always clearly better in this case. If you were defending the castle during castle battle, then you would probably want the health bonus to survive the initial round of attack and preserve your troops. However, if you were defending the Viking event where the defender goes first, then you might actually be better off with the lethality bonus to wipe out the enemy before they can even attack. I think in more cases on defense, the health would actually be better, but again, I can't universally say so. However, with all of that said, Hilda does get slightly more health and lethality from her widget, and she has slightly more bonus attack and defense that she gives to troops versus Jabel. So on the whole, she's probably a slight upgrade to Jabel in Expedition 2. And our next hero to discuss is the infantry hero Zoe. If you are a free-to-play player, Zoe is going to be your new best friend. Actually, even if you're a spender, you'll like her. Let's talk about why. On the Conquest side, we start off with Shield Strike. While this ability does a decent amount of damage, the fact that it is spread out in 4 attacks over 2 seconds means the enemy's defense gets to apply 4 times. So not as great as it could be, but given her relatively high attack, it's still helpful. But the real appeal of this ability is the potential to increase enemy damage taken by up to 30%. This can combo extremely well with a high damage attacker on the backline, and may help the enemy's frontline fall quicker. Typically, the side whose frontline is defeated first goes on to lose the match, so being able to break down the wall on one side is a great advantage. And our next skill is Agony Rush. Once per battle, when she drops below half of her health, she can gain back up to 40% of it. This significantly increases her uptime, considering that not only does she have the second highest health pool in the game, only slightly behind Amadeus, but she also has the highest defensive stat. So again, this really helps her hold the front line longer than the enemy. And her last skill is a speed buff for all of your heroes. 7% isn't that much, but it can make a difference when you consider that it's applied to 5 heroes. So very quickly, we can see exactly the type of role that the developer wants to carve out for Zoe. She's a tank that can withstand an immense amount of damage, while helping the rest of your heroes deal more. This typically means she will outlive any other hero she faces off against on the front line, and she becomes even more powerful if she has someone like Hilda backing her up with some healing. On the Expedition side, Zoe's first ability is Sundering Wound, which might be a bit confusing the way it's read. Remember, battles between armies are simulated in multiple rounds, and you can see the details in that same Ultimate Kingshot combat guide I mentioned earlier. But basically, this skill has a 20% chance of increasing the damage that your troops deal by 40% for the next 3 of those simulated turns. You'll attempt to use this ability every turn of combat, so the uptime of this ability is actually higher than the 20% would suggest. At the same time, it is still a percent chance-based skill, which means that if 2 people send Zoe as their lead hero when joining a rally, the abilities will not stack together. So this is something to be careful of, but it is still a solid move nonetheless. Charisma is a much simpler ability to understand. It provides an additional 25% boost to the attack of all troops. It's not lethality, but it's still helpful for enhancing damage. And finally, Infinite Arsenal is another percentage-based skill. This one is a 50% chance of increasing enemy damage taken by 50%. So here again, we see a similar role for Zoe as in Conquest, which is taking hits by virtue of her being an infantry hero that buffs your infantry troops, and boosting the damage that other troops deal to the enemy. In this case though, she just leans into the helping others boost damage quite a bit more. And for her exclusive gear, we get an ability that adds a 24% attack buff to her self-heal when she drops below 50% health. I guess that's somewhat useful given her base attack stat is on the higher side, but it doesn't quite fit the role of the rest of her abilities in Conquest. Same thing with her Expedition skill, Dark Lady. It's another 15% attack boost, but only when on defense. I mean, she's a great option for being part of a defensive rally, but the rest of her Expedition skills read very offensive in nature. So again, this one feels sort of out of place. So overall, I actually find the exclusive gear abilities here a little bit underwhelming, since it feels like a mismatch with the rest of her kit. However, she's otherwise so good in all other dimensions that it's forgivable. So for overall thoughts, she's definitely a must-build territory, especially given how few infantry heroes there actually are, even more so when you restrict it to only free-to-play heroes. And last, we have everyone's favorite drunken pirate, the archer hero Marlin. His Conquest abilities are all about dealing massive AoE damage to the enemy and disrupting them with stuns. His signature move, Tidal Rush, does 280% of his attack value as area of effect damage. And remember, Marlin has the highest attack stat of all heroes in the game by far during Generation 2. In addition, this move gets a 1.5 second stun. I know the description says immobilize, but it actually is a stun, not simply rooting them to the ground. And even better, he can trigger this attack 5 seconds into battle, which is slightly before many enemies will use their ultimate moves. And the potential to delay these abilities while wiping out their escort troops all at once can definitely change the outcome of the battle. Next up is Fermented Blow, a second area of effect ability. This one only does 70% attack value as damage, but again, it's off the highest base stat in the game. In certain situations, it might be able to finish off escort troops that may have survived his first volley or the AoE of another hero in the battlefield, but just don't be expecting to take down any enemy heroes with this one. And then we have Lucky Hit, which when upgraded can stun an enemy for half a second every 5 attacks. This is a good skill, but it can work a little inconsistently. He does a normal attack about once per second if you put aside his other abilities for a moment, and it means he could in theory have a target stunned for about 10% of the time. The challenge is that I've sometimes seen this move used on an escort troop if it came right after a hero fell and he hadn't picked up another hero as a target yet. And it really doesn't do much good to stun a single escort troop, especially with that much damage flying around. Still, overall a helpful move and complements the rest of his kit well, but it can just be a little bit subject to chance. So I guess it's appropriately named Lucky Hit. And then on the expedition side, his rally contribution move is Wildcard, which gives a 40% chance of increasing damage dealt by 50%. It's sort of odd that this is a slightly lower percentage chance of doing the same thing versus Jabel's Hero Domain or Quinn's Precision Shot, which are both a 50% chance of doing 50% more damage. It's also not ideal in the first position slot since you won't be able to stack it at rallies. But if you are leading a rally with him, this is still a solid skill since Gen 1 Orange Archer Saul doesn't have any skill like it, and Quinn only has 2 expedition skills. Drumhead is a very interesting move, as it is the first lethality debuff you will likely encounter. Given how important lethality is as a stat, a 50% reduction, which would be classified as a special bonus, is a pretty big deal. If it actually triggers. A 20% chance is low, but it also lasts for 2 turns when it hits, which means you can expect this ability to be active roughly 2 out of every 5 turns, or 40% of the time. And a 40% chance of a 50% reduction averages out to be about a 20% reduction to enemy lethality across all rounds of combat. So it's not as crazy powerful on the average, but with some luck you could win a battle you otherwise would have lost. And with Dynamo, we find that slightly better version of that first position skill. This time it's a 50% chance of increasing damage dealt by 50%. Because this is a different skill than the first one, it would stack with it, meaning you might be able to get both 50% damage bonuses in the same round of combat. This means that when Generation 2 comes out, he is very solidly in the position of the best in slot archer hero for rally leading due to these strong offensive abilities, coupled with his increased stats. Imagine both of those abilities going off in a rally with 4 Chenkos contributing a lethality bonus, and you can see how the impact of these abilities working together could deal massive amounts of damage. And for his Mistweaver exclusive gear, we get 2 additional abilities. For Conquest, the hilarious Servant of Wine ability heals your weakest hero by up to 15% of his attack rating with each basic attack. At level 85 stars, this would equate to about 500 health per second before considering the attack bonuses from any gear he is wearing. So it's actually not going to be that much health restoration, but it does help in that it targets the hero with the lowest health, which could keep your frontline up slightly longer, especially if they're stunned for a couple seconds from his other moves. Admiral of the Line, however, is an awesome ability. It's a 15% lethality bonus, which was the one thing his expedition skill kit was missing, and the only last advantage that Saul had over him. Saul's ability is much easier to level and still tops out at a 25% increase, but now it's even clearer that Marlin is the new best in slot archer hero. Okay, so now that we've talked a lot about all of these heroes, let's discuss how to prioritize investment between them. We've gone through all of their strengths and abilities, but we haven't really talked about the cost to build them, because in a way it's different for each. Zoe will appear in the hero roulette wheel enough times for you to easily build her to 4 stars and beyond with intentional saving of gems. She'll be available enough that you should not need to use Mythic General Hero Shards on acquiring her. This is fantastic news for free-to-play players, since Infantry is the one hero class where you're really lacking at this point in the game. And if you're free-to-play, you've basically been relying on Howard in Expedition and Howard plus Seth or Gordon or someone on your front line in Arena. So this is a huge upgrade any way you look at it. And even if you are a spender and have Helga, Zoe is still a straight-up improvement on every single stat and has better abilities. So definitely be saving your gems for Zoe. It's a no-regrets move to build her. For Marlon and Hilda, however, they are a bit tougher to build. Marlon appears in the Hall of Heroes weekly shop event, and you can get up to 10 of his shards for just shy of 15,000 gems. Hilda, on the other hand, will become the new rotating hero for Hall of Governors, and eventually strongest governor when that event evolves. Getting her in Hall of Governors requires you to place high on the leaderboards, which may in itself require some spending depending on how competitive your server is. So if you're a free-to-play player looking at who else to build in addition to Zoe, you have a clearer path to getting non-spending copies of Marlon, and use your orange hero shards to get you the rest of the way there, assuming you didn't use them that much on Jabel or Saul. Another reason for choosing to invest in Marlon over Hilda is that she does not represent such a significant increase over Jabel, and Jabel is extremely easy to build for an orange hero. Meanwhile, Marlon is a much bigger step up over Saul or any of the purple archer heroes you might still be using. So for that reason, I would say if you're on the free-to-play or even low spender side of the game, then I would believe Marlon to be a bigger return on your investment than Hilda. However, if you are a significant spender, particularly one who likes to complete an arena, then Hilda will definitely still be worth picking up. The most efficient way to do this would be to acquire her shards slowly over time using the daily deals options every day, and then actually upgrade her during the Hall of Governors to get more points and win extra Hilda shards. For large spenders, I would probably spend more in maxing out Marlon over Hilda, since his kit, particularly the lethality bonus on the widget, will likely give him more long-term staying power in Expedition mode meta. And if you're thinking of maxing all of them for Arena, then you should try a formation of Zoe, Amadeus, Hilda, Marlon, and Jabel. That formation seems to dominate the Arena charts during Season 2 hero timeline, and even into early Season 3. Let me know in the comments if you have a different take on this hero analysis and prioritization. And to make sure that you're all getting the most out of your hero investments, I would highly recommend you check out the rest of my Kingshot Hero Reviews playlist. Please like and subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest tips, tricks, and guides that I post. Thanks again for your support and watching, and happy gaming out there.